I didn't realize I was on mute. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
How are you? How was your 4th of July, everyone? Relaxing? Fun. Yeah. I just can't believe how fast it went. It didn't really feel like 4th of July this year around. Okay, we'll just wait another minute or two just to give everyone an opportunity to join.
Hi, Donna. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Pretty good. My fourth was excellent. It was my birthday, so
Happy birthday.
thank you. Thank you.
That's
Is
awesome.
that a fake background you have? Because it's so pretty.
It is. It is.
Good job. It's so pretty.
Yeah, it looks nice. So I love pink, and Fred, he was like, you need a pink background. So
How cute is
oh, I
that?
think it's this way, yeah, with the pink.
Yeah.
I was trying to
Doesn't
figure
look
it out
fake.
before this meeting. I was trying to figure that out. So the next
Yeah.
meeting, I might be in competition with you with the next meeting.
Okay,
Uh-oh.
bring it on.
I'm
Yeah,
saying, is that her house or is that an office? Where is she? Because you got the Remax behind
and
you.
and I have a ring light now because I started recording some videos for us, and my lighting was horrible. If you guys saw the newsletter, but I was like, sometimes you just have to do it, and not pay attention what you look like with the lighting. Just go out and. But now I have a green screen. I have a microphone. Like it's on. Pretty competitive.
That's right.
I was gonna say it doesn't really look like a background. It looks real, like maybe
Yeah.
it's the green screen. Is that what it is?
I don't even have a green screen on right now.
You
No.
don't? Oh.
No, I don't. So, but it looks pretty good.
Mm.
He set it up for me. All right, so we only have 30 minutes because Glenn's will start right at 10. So there's a few things that I wanted to go over. One of them that kind of sparked this topic for me was actually Mary brought it up, Mary Peck, our manager in Fort Lee, brought it up to my attention. So it just made me start digging. So as you guys know with the mansion tax, if you are representing sellers or buyers, this will affect you. So this is being recorded and it will be on our mastermind session. So I just wanted to make a clarification because it's very important when you're talking to your sellers, right? They trust you. So I want to make sure you guys fully understand when you leave today what this means. So as you know, if a property is under contract before July 10th, so that means July 9th is really when attorney review is concluding, not July 10th. And it closes before November. I mean, the deed has to be recorded before November 15, not closing. So that means it has to close before then. The deed must stay recorded November 15 or before to be considered. Now, if you're selling something above a million, whether it's $1 million, 2 million, 3 million, between these dates that I just mentioned, the seller still has to pay the 1%. That is not going away. So what's going to happen is if it goes under contract on or before, I'm just going to say before July 10, not on July 10. If it's under contract and it closes before November 15, let's say the property's 3 million, they're paying the title company is probably going to collect the 3%, but they're going to get reimbursed the 2% in excess of the 1%. So they're still responsible for 1%.
So Donna, it's causing like issues because when they were under contract, the contract does say the buyer is going to pay the mansion tax that 1%. And they were all in agreement. Now I have people like buyers saying, oh, I don't want to close. They're kind of pushing back. And I think that's going to cause some issues. Um, yeah,
So
it's
another thing to be competitive, right? If you're on the buyer side, because yes, if I had a buyer that was looking to buy a property in that $1 million, let's just say New Jersey is not a mansion. That's a standard price point in certain towns. So there is no mansion at $1 million, but unfortunately they call it a mansion tax. I would put that as a negotiation part of my deal when I'm submitting an offer, especially if there's multiple offers and you want to win it. I would tell my buyer, hey, you should offer to pay the mansion tax because now it falls on the seller. But we are going to see a lot of, if we are dealing with those type of properties right now that's under contract, yeah, you're going to see it. Unfortunately, they can't go back on the contract. So the buyer will need to stick with it. Like there's no back out. You know, the seller can sue for specific performance in the event that they decide to cancel the contract because of this change. So, you know, if it's before July 10, right, that it has been executed and everything, it still falls under the old terms of the contract. This is just for new transactions moving forward.
Wait a minute. Now I'm confused. Wait, so deals that, let's say they went under contract, like let's say middle of June, they're going to close soon. Okay.
Mhm.
Who's paying? Because they went under contract before July 10th.
So from New Jersey Realtors, it says
Seller
all
is still
contracts
paying.
fully executed on or before on or after July 10, this 1% paid by the home buyer is eliminated. So after July 10, if it's before, you know, let's say it was closing and then in the recent weeks, then it would still fall under the same contractual negotiations that says the buyer was paying. This is when you're writing new deals, right? If you're negotiating deals right now, because this law just passed, we can't go backwards, right? Yes, you can, yeah.
I was just going to say that was my understanding. If you had a deal and was already executed, it's exactly how it was. If there is something that's being written and it's written before July 9th, then this whole thing about them getting reimbursed will kick in and apply. And then after that, it's still, you know, the seller is paying. And I would also say that the way I'm looking at it and talking to agents about it is this is like any other term or condition, right? Like seller can counter somebody and say, well, hey, listen, I'll take this price if you pay the mansion tax. You know what I mean? I try not to get too crazy about these things. It's something we don't have any control, but what we can control is our response to it. So treat it like any other term or condition is what I'm telling. Just like what you just said, Adona, you can negotiate on the buyer's side, you can throw it in, just like everything else.
So this was signed into law, I believe, June 29, right? So we can't go backwards, something that was a negotiated beginning of June and now saying, oh, guess what? Now, you know, so that's why the buyer is still paying. If this is just starting July, it's effective July 10, right? So this is, if you're negotiating now, the only difference it was the refund for the seller. Right? So if you were negotiating a deal right now, Mary, and it's not under contract by July 10 and the property's 2 million, your seller's paying 2%. However, if it goes under contract, let's say today or tomorrow, the latest really, and it's $2 million, the seller will only have to pay the 1%. They're still having to front 2%, but they can get reimbursed by the treasury, the axis of the 1%. So let's say if it's 2%, they're getting 1% back. They still don't have clarification how they file for reimbursement. Just so you know, I don't have that information.
So Idona, like, I understand the things that are, that we're going to write up. I understand that part. But if it was under contract, in the calculator that I sent you, the screenshot, it says for all contracts, all the way at the bottom, fully executed prior to July 10th, where the deed is recorded before, obviously, November 15th, the graduated percent fee paid in excess of 1%. So it is saying that the seller is paying, even if it wasn't under contract, as long as it didn't close.
They can't go prior than June 29 because that was only signed, this was signed into law June 29. They can't go backwards, something that was already sign. But I will clarify this with the state attorney and I will create a video just so that I can give you guys a better understanding. But I know I read something now, I just don't recall, and I don't want to make guesses, where it did say that if it was prior to this getting into law, it was going to stay as is. But
Oh, okay, yes, that makes
I
sense.
will confirm that for you guys. And if I don't do a video, I'll definitely share with you guys next Tuesday.
Perfect.
The other thing, I come up with my topics based on what I'm helping agents with, just so that you guys don't make the same mistake or get burned the same way. So I try to prevent that from happening. The other thing that I wanted to talk about is sometimes we're always on the go, go, go. We take verbal agreements and we think everyone's going to hold up their bargain deal and whatever you guys negotiated, nothing's going to happen. Everything's going to work out. But those actually ends up being the issue that becomes a big problem where your license is not on the line. So I'm going to share something that was a lesson learned for one of our agents, as well as, hopefully for all of you guys. When you're writing, whether it's a sale or a rental, if you're negotiating a contract and you're making any changes, whether that's dates, terms, anything to that effect, you have to get it initialed and signed. You have to. So for instance, the agents negotiated a term on the lease, and they said it's in writing saying, yep, the tenant agreed, yep, the landlord agreed, but they never had, the agent typed it up on the lease, but never had it initialed. So you want to make sure if you're making those type of changes, you have to add the initial. You have to be protected, to be valid, because now you just made a change to the contract without being fully executed by one party. The other thing I wanted to touch base is on listings that you guys take. The market has shifted, and I'm sure you have all seen that. If you're taking a listing that it's overpriced, but the seller says, hey, I want to test the market. Let's just try for 30 days, 60 days. And in the event it doesn't sell, I'm willing to reduce it to the amount you suggested, or we can then talk and come up with the price strategy at that point. Do you guys have that signed in the listing where you both agree that you're overpricing this property, it's going to go on the market, but they agree to reduce the price in the event that it doesn't sell? And if you don't, then you should, right? Don't just go on verbal communication with that person, because they're going to change. It's going to be your words against their word.
Excuse me.
Yes.
A question about that. I usually just tell them. I don't actually have them sign a waiver saying that we're gonna reduce the price in 2 weeks, but I do tell them, listen, we'll go with your price. If we don't have any activity, any offers in 2 weeks, then we go back down to the price that I'm suggesting. I always do that if it's an overpriced listing, but I've never ever signed something. Is there something in the documents that I could find if I
There
need it?
isn't. So we don't have, like, it's not a waiver, but I would write it on my listing. That's the listing agreements between you and the seller. You can add a page that says additional terms. You just want to make sure that what I'm trying to prevent is for you guys to not waste your time, because what happens now if your seller comes back to you and says, no, you told me that you will do everything you can to sell my house and it didn't. Why should I reduce it? I want this price. And if you can't sell it, then I want to cancel my listing. Then what do you do from that point? Right?
Well,
Now,
do they have ground? They don't have grounds to cancel that listing, do they? If that's the case,
say that again.
do they have grounds to cancel that listing?
They
That's the
can,
case.
the seller can, they can cancel it. You can do a withdrawal, like a conditional withdrawal, if you want to hold on to the contract, but that's not helping you either, right? Because they're not going to let you show the property. So at that point, you're better off sometimes releasing it. But I want to make sure, I don't want to make this easy on the seller or give them an opportunity to be like, oh, wow, like if my property doesn't sell this price, I can just go ahead and cancel it. I also don't want that to be a big known fact. But I also want to make sure you guys are protecting yourself, because you're spending money on marketing, right? Photography. Sometimes if you're going through Cinema Flight, you're spending a couple $100 just marketing alone. And I guess the clause that I would want you guys to probably add to make sure you're protected, and without even mentioning what we just said about the price reduction, is in the event that the seller decides to withdraw or cancel the listing, they're going to reimburse you for your expenses. at no fault to the listing agent. Now, if it's your fault where you didn't do your due diligence, you didn't do your job, you kind of just let it sit on the market, didn't do any type of, you never answered your phone, that's different. But if it's no due to your fault that it didn't sell and they just changed their mind, you should get reimbursed for your expenses. And you should have that in writing. Rob looks like he's on my call. I guess he's on the phone and he's just listening in. Okay, yeah. Any questions? What do you guys think? I don't want you guys to lose listings over this, but you also, one thing that I have come week after week is I'm in situations where I'm trying to get some type of reimbursement back for our agent that did everything, open houses, send them comms, gave them all the feedbacks from showings, but unfortunately from the get-go, the property was overpriced. And now the seller says, nope, I want to cancel because maybe another agent said, hey, I'll sell it. They didn't do a good job, or I can do XYZ for you. And, yeah, it's not the best way to like just release a listing, but that's not doing you any good either, right? You don't want to have a listing sitting on the market for, let's say you did 6 months or 1 year and it didn't sell. So sometimes it's best to just take your loss, get some type of reimbursement for your losses and just let it go. Audrey, I see you have your hand raised. Sorry, I didn't see you. Do you have a comment?
Yeah, I have a question. Where would we put this information that you're talking about right now?
So you can always add something to your listing agreement where it says additional terms. You can and then you can write saying, additional terms on the third page, just for your knowledge, for you and the seller information, and have them sign off on it. That's how I would do it. I would just write addendum to the listing agreement dated July 9, 2025 between Audrey Porter and Adona Brahimi, property address, and then I would just list those terms. When I know these listing agreements are getting shorter and shorter, so there's like very little room to add additional terms, but I realize like now there's a lot of sellers that thought they can get a certain price, they're not, and they don't want to reduce the price because they have it in their mind like, I want this price or it's not selling. And then our agent is, spending at least $500 between, different MLSs, photography, and your time doing the open house. And so I feel like if it's not your fault that it's not selling and the seller decided to cancel, then they should reimburse you for your fees, and you should have that in writing. So that way, if it does come to that point, first of all, if you already have that from the beginning, your seller might not even want to cancel because they can't even afford to pay you that money, right? Especially if they need to sell. So you're setting the expectations right from day one. Any questions? Any comments? It doesn't have to even be on this topic.
I have another one.
Yes.
So if we're doing that for the seller, so we're not wasting our money, we should have something that we could do for the buyers as well. So we're not wasting our time with them. They're the ones that waste our time the most.
Yeah, so on the buyer agency agreement, the additional page, you have a full page that you can write. That's what it's for, additional terms. So if you want to write a clause that says that in the event the buyer, if you have done all your due diligence, right, you're showing them properties, etc., and you want to get reimbursed for your time, then you pick an amount what you want to charge the buyer, whatever that amount may be. You can say in the event the buyer chooses to cancel this contract due to no fault to the buyer's agent, you can charge like $30 per showing for all the houses that you did, right? Something like that. So that way you're not setting a set amount at that point, but saying if you cancel this contract, then you're gonna, in order for this contract to be null and void, you can, it will be a $25 per showing. And then you have to keep list of all the showings that you did, because effectively to cancel the buyer agency agreement, you have to send them an email with all the properties you have shown. You have to list saying, hey, effective today, our contract has been canceled. Here's the properties I have shown you in the last 3 months, 2 weeks, 5 days. In the event that you end up wanting to submit an offer on any of these properties, please note that I am protected for an extra 120 days, whatever amount you put on the protection clause, that they're going to owe you a commission. Because you're the one who showed the property. So you guys are all staring at me with blank face. Let me know if I confused any of you, if you want me to give you guys a different example.
Have you had to go after anyone that did that? An agent showed it and then they bought it with someone else?
Yes, I did go to mediation, where, unfortunately though, the only thing that we didn't have was a buyer agency agreement because the property we wrote an offer was prior to, August 1st last year. But what happened is, the buyer ended up buying sometime in November, but you know, we had proof that the agent kept in touch with the listing agent. They kept in touch with the buyer. So make sure you know, you can't just have a buyer agency agreement and no communication with the buyer and expect to get paid. So you have to show proof that you have tried and communicated with both sides of it. And yeah, so we did get a little bit of money, but yes. And I see more coming up in the future for sure, with the agency
I
agreement.
just feel like a lot of these leads, like, how would you know if they went with another agent? You know, if you're not in touch with them, how are you going to know that?
Yeah, so a lot of times what some MLSs will allow you to do are checking text records. Like if you have shown a property, you can just, I know NJMLS, you can put like alerts, and then if it goes under, they still have that, correct, Mary? Where if you put an alert, you get notified when it closes or it goes under contract, etc. No, they don't have that anymore. Okay, so this particular agent just checked it on the text record.
Okay. Okay.
And then she was able to, sometimes it's your gut too, right? It
Yeah.
just, when something seems off, it's probably off. But
For
yeah,
sure.
tax records, you know, if you are keeping in touch with your clients, then you'll know if they're buying with you or not. So this agent particularly reached out to the buyer and they're like, oh, we're going to put a hold on our search. We're not going to buy till next year. And then it just prompted her to just keep checking. And that's
Good.
what she found
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
And if you're not from New Jersey, just know Glenn's Mastermind starts at 10. This particular session is just for New Jersey agents, okay? So if you're listening in, feel free, but what we're talking about, it only affects New Jersey. Any other questions for you guys?
Good morning, Adona.
Yes, good morning.
I was asking about the land contract, that
Yes.
what we can alter on the residential one that we have. Like we're allowed to modify that to reflect a larger piece of land that's good for development.
So as a real estate agent, we are not allowed to modify a contract. We can only fill any information on the blank spots. So we cannot add, change, cross out any of the verbiage on the contract. An attorney, on the other hand, can do that, but not an agent.
And we don't have any forms that,
You're Joe Daly, right?
yes.
Okay. I will call you after our mastermind at 11 today, and I'll make sure I find you a land contract. I'll look on New Jersey Realtor for you.
All right, that'd be great because I haven't found one yet.
Okay.
That's not residential, you
Yep.
know.
You
Okay,
got
great.
it.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Anything else? How are you guys doing? Anyone have any listings that it's above $1 million currently, and have you had those conversations with your clients?
Yes, I have, Edona.
How did it go?
Well, it's alarming to say the least, and I'm actually alarmed to learn that he might have to pay. So I have the seller, and it's kind of crazy how it's a sales tax that the seller now has to pay. and that he might have to come up with money at closing that's going to sit in escrow to pay to get reimbursed. Like if, because our contract was signed before July 10th. In fact, we're in attorney review period right now.
Okay.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, you know, the contract say is 1.1, he's going to have to pay the additional tax and then wait to get reimbursed.
So when did it go under contract?
It didn't.
Last week,
Oh, that's right.
before July 10th.
But was it after June 29?
Yeah, because it was like, I don't have it in front of me, but I want to say it was
So-
just before the 4th of July, because we're in attorney review now.
So as you know, between 1 million to 2 million, it's 1%, right? So your
Right.
seller is not getting a reimbursement. Your seller will have to pay that 1%. They're not getting no reimbursement, unfortunately. It's only if the property was above 2 million and then they had to front the 2%, they will get reimbursement of 1%. If it, you know, if it went under contract between June 30th and July 10th.
So between June 30th, July 10th, it's not before it went into effect.
It
I'm
went
kind
into
of,
effect June 29. Like this was signed into law June 29. I think the confusion is with the whole reimbursement. The seller, the buyer, if it went, when this went into law, right, it's June 29. They just gave a little wiggle room for transactions that were during the transition, right? They were, when they were still signing contracts. So it's a little confusing the way they presented, but what it means is that if it went under contract, like let's say now yours, it happened after it was signed into law June 29, and it went under contract before July 10, your seller still has to front the full amount, whether it's 1, 2, 3. So your property is 1.1, it's only 1%. They still have to pay 1% if it's closing, regardless when. They're still paying the 1%. They're not getting a reimbursement because the buyer is not paying. So they're not collecting 1% from the buyer now. They're collecting it from the seller. So your seller is still paying 1%.
the way we read it with what put out, you know, the new law kind of thing, the way we read it, that if the contract was signed before July 10th, it does not apply that the seller will have to pay the tax, that the buyers still would have to pay the tax.
No,
Not anything between June 29th and July
so
10th.
the law, it went into law June 30th because I wasn't sure if it's June 29 or June 30. So it
Okay.
went into law. It's effective July 10 because that means the seller will have to pay the full mansion tax. So if it's 1 million to 2 million, it's 1%. If it's 2 million to 2.5 and a penny, it's 2.5, etc. It goes higher and higher and higher, right? What they're saying is that if it went under contract after, if it's in attorney review after June 30, right? You're negotiating a deal after it went into law on June 30th, because the law was signed, this was signed into law June 30th. So if it's being negotiated and goes under contract before July 10, the seller has an opportunity to get reimbursed in excess of 1%. They're still paying 1% no matter what, how much the property is worth above $1 million.
I get that. I get the reimbursement, but my seller's not under the impression that he has to pay that tax that is still on the buyer because the contract was done before, because it goes into effect July 10th, not July 3rd. So he's under the impression he doesn't have to pay that.
So just 1 second, I'm going to pause you. If you're not from New Jersey, this is New Jersey Mastermind. It ends at 10. So please, if you're not from New Jersey, I am not giving you guys any advice because I'm not licensed in any other state. You just need to, because I see some comments. I don't want to end this, but it is now 10 and I don't want to confuse the other agents. I will call you, Joe, and then I guess we need more clarification on the next Tuesday mastermind. Okay, so just make
All
sure.
right.
But I will
Thank you.
talk to you, Joe, after 10, after 11.
Okay. Thank you, Adona.
You're welcome.